Greetings, everyone. This is Zakes here, and today we'll be talking about free trade, right? And this makes sense, of course, as the Free Market Foundation. Free trade is one of our fundamental pillars. But beyond the actual general idea of free trade, we want to make it practical for you as a South African, right? How does free trade and its adherence or non-adherence in terms of a policy landscape and the state in general, how does it impact you? As we know recently, well, if you don't know, there's an article you can read, and I'm sure that will be linked in the video below. If you didn't know this, Shein will now be required to pay normal customs and duties, even for packages that are below a certain threshold. Now, the actual details of this are not important for us, but what is actually important in this video is that there are certain government actions that can be taken that can lead to you paying more for goods and services. And this is meant, because that was the reasoning, at least for the Shein debacle, was that it was meant to protect local industries. Now, one tends to think as, why should local industries be protected at the expense of a consumer who will now have to pay more for goods and services? I say I will let you decide. But free trade, what is it, right? This is the ability to enter into a contract of exchange with anyone, be it your next door neighbor, or thanks to the beauties of globalization and advancement in transport, someone as far away as Guangdong, China, right? As cross-border traders or exporters, well, in our case, importers will know. So this is the fundamental pillar of what makes a free market possible, of course, with the implication of private property rights, which is both people own the things that they are trading. Free trade is important because, well, you cannot produce everything that you need in life. You need other people to produce things that you need for you, right? You have a certain talent, let us say, or a certain skill. You're gifted in singing, one is gifted in planting or farming, right? One will, of course, use their skill to sing, another to farm, but you cannot live off of entertainment only, nor can you live off of food only. And I'm sure, given that we live in Africa, this may be hard to understand, but also it may be simultaneously easy to understand because we are quite, the artistic people. So we understand the value of art in life. So those two people, of course, since they need things that they cannot provide for themselves, will enter into a contract of exchange. And this is what makes civilization and general prosperity possible, because you now get to have things that you otherwise not have had you not been interacting with other people. The problem comes in then when a third party in this instance is the state, will say, maybe you should not enter into a contract with someone in Guangdong, China, enter into a contract with someone in South Africa, or someone, in Soweto, if you're from Soweto like I am. And then if you were to tell said third party that, well, I don't want to do that, in the instance of the state, you can't. And this is where the fundamental problem arises, right? Because given the nature of value, it means that you find the exchange with someone in China much more valuable than the exchange with someone in South Africa, which is why you're opting to do it. Yet when the state is going to put inhibitions on you, like saying that if you are going to have a contract with someone in China, it's okay, you can have it. We'll just, take 45% of whatever value of that contract in China with that person is, then that kind of is problematic, because the whole implication, the end of that regulation is so that you would be demotivated from having a contract with that person who is, in China, as in our example, in motivation for a local industry. Now, practically, this saw itself happen with Shein. South Africans and everyone really across the world love purchasing products from China. Love is a stretch. Human beings just love purchasing cheap stuff. I'm sure everyone will agree, right? We all want to have more disposable income, and to have that disposable income purchase more things because we have just unlimited ones. So if we can get the things that we want at a cheaper rate, we'll always opt for that at all times. So it becomes problematic then when the state will come in and say, in the guise of protecting local industries like it did local clothing industries, right? And say that it will charge extra taxes or extra costs from products in China. And then it will say that this is with the end of creating jobs in South Africa. One has to ask themselves, how did China manage to produce goods so cheaply that they are still cheaper, even though they are traveling thousands of kilometers? The answer is in one of the policies we always advocate here at the Free Market Foundation, which is a deregulation of our labor markets. It is just cheaper to produce things in China. They have built the capacity over the years through the capital accumulation and the skills development that came with that capital formation and accumulation to be able to produce at large scale and quite low cost. South Africa could have an opportunity to do this, but it cannot start from the top up, right? It cannot inherently do this by saying that the South African consumer should pay less. Instead, the best solution for the protection of local industries is to make it so that local industries have access to labor at rates that are much more similar to China. That's the only way that local industries can compete, at rates and conditions that are similar to China. That is the only way South African consumers who really do have no allegiance, right? When you wear a piece of clothing, you really don't care where it was made. You just care that you like it and you are able to afford it. Most cases they're not. And the best way to be able to have South Africans choose to buy any South African product is to have that product be within their price range. And when free trade, in a much more bigger context, right, as we've just spoken about a practical example, when it is inhibited in a much more bigger scale, you then run into problems where prosperity over the long run is derailed, right? At the Free Market Foundation, we are fortunate enough to have partnered with the Fraser Institute, who conducts this index, which is called the Economic Freedom of the World Index, which inherently, for lack of a better term, judges how free a certain country's market is. And one of the metrics that are considered there is the ability to trade among citizens and also internationally, right? So as that index will indicate, the more inhibitions in trade there are in any jurisdiction, the less quality of life outcomes you tend to see, well, at least good ones, right? So states with less intervention tend to have higher incomes, higher life expectancies, lower child mortality rates. So, things like that. The outcomes of what makes a good life happen are quite correlated to not having inhibitions in trading and, markets, because that is the fundamental of what builds prosperity and a good life, for lack of a better term. Now, that is all from me about free trade. I'm sure you have a lot to say about it, since, particularly the South African textile industry is something that is close to a lot of people's hearts who still remember when South Africa had a pretty, good textile industry under questionable conditions, to say the least. But, that is a story for another day. But should you have any thoughts, please let us know down below. And always remember to stay free.